Welcome everyone to another exciting episode of English Fluency Unleashed. I'm Jason, and with me as always is my wonderful co-host, Julia.
Hello, hello. It's great to be here, Jason. We've got a fantastic topic lined up for our listeners today, haven't we?
Absolutely, Julia. Today, we're diving deep into a challenge that many English learners face: how to speak English fluently without pausing too much. It's something that can really make a difference in how confident and proficient you sound.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I remember when I was learning Spanish, those awkward pauses were the bane of my existence. But fear not, dear listeners. We've got a treasure trove of tips and tricks to help you smooth out those pauses and speak with more confidence and fluency.
That's right. We'll be covering everything from understanding why we pause in the first place, to practical techniques for reducing those pauses, and even some brain training exercises to get your English flowing more naturally.
And don't forget the fluency exercises and mindset shifts, Jason. Those are game changers.
Absolutely. So, shall we kick things off by exploring why learners tend to pause when speaking English?
Let's do it. You know, one of the biggest reasons I've noticed is confidence issues. When you're not sure if what you're saying is correct, it's natural to hesitate.
That's so true, Julia. And it's not just about confidence in grammar or vocabulary. Sometimes it's about the fear of making mistakes or being judged by native speakers.
Exactly. And speaking of vocabulary, that's another major cause of pauses. When you're searching for the right word, it's easy to get stuck.
Oh, absolutely. I see this all the time with my students. They know what they want to say in their native language, but translating it into English in real time can be challenging.
And let's not forget about overthinking. Sometimes learners get so caught up in trying to construct the perfect sentence that they end up not saying anything at all.
That's a great point, Julia. It's like they're trying to be their own internal editor and speaker at the same time, which is just too much to handle in a conversation.
Exactly. And then there's the nervousness factor. When you're feeling anxious about speaking, those pauses can become even more pronounced.
Absolutely. It's a vicious cycle. The more nervous you are, the more you pause. And the more you pause, the more nervous you become about your speaking abilities.
So true. But here's the good news. All of these issues can be addressed and improved with the right techniques and mindset.
That's right, Julia. So, let's move on to some practical techniques to reduce those pesky pauses. What's your go-to strategy?
One of my favorites is thinking in English. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly effective. Instead of translating in your head, try to form your thoughts directly in English.
That's a fantastic tip. It takes practice, but it really does help reduce those translation pauses. Another technique I often recommend is using filler words, but judiciously.
Oh, tell me more about that, Jason. I'm curious about your take on filler words.
Well, words like, well, you know, I mean, or actually, can give you a moment to think without a complete silence. But the key is not to overuse them. We want fluency, not a speech full of ums and ahs.
That's a great point. It's all about balance, isn't it? Another technique I love is shadowing. Have you tried this with your students, Jason?
Absolutely. For those who aren't familiar, shadowing involves listening to native English speakers and repeating what they say in real time. It's fantastic for improving pronunciation, intonation, and reducing pauses.
It really is. And it helps you internalize natural speech patterns too. Now, what about perfectionism? That can be a real pause creator.
Oh, don't get me started on perfectionism. It's the enemy of fluency. We need to encourage learners to embrace mistakes as part of the learning process.
Couldn't agree more. It's better to speak imperfectly than to not speak at all, because you're afraid of making mistakes.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about some brain training exercises for faster speech. Julia, what's your favorite?
I'm a big fan of learning phrases rather than individual words. It helps you chunk information together, making it easier to recall and use in conversation without pausing.
That's brilliant. It's like having prefabricated pieces of language ready to go. I'd add active listening to that list, really focusing on how native speakers construct sentences and use language in context.
Oh, absolutely. And what about anticipation? I find it really helpful to try and predict what the other person might say next in a conversation.
That's a great technique. It keeps your brain engaged and ready to respond. Another one I love is imitation not just of words, but of the rhythm and intonation of native speakers.
Yes, it's amazing how much your fluency can improve when you nail the musicality of the language. Now, shall we move on to some specific fluency exercises?
Absolutely. One of my favorites is the 1 minute speaking challenge. Set a timer for 1 minute and speak non-stop about any topic. It's harder than it sounds.
Oh, I love that one. It really pushes you out of your comfort zone. Another great exercise is story retelling. Listen to a short story or watch a video clip, then try to retell it in your own words.
That's excellent for building narrative skills and using connectors naturally. What about speed conversations? Have you tried those with your students?
Yes, they're so much fun. The idea is to have a conversation on a given topic, but to speak as quickly as you comfortably can. It really helps to break down that internal translation barrier.
It sure does. And for those who prefer tech-based solutions, I've found speech-to-text practice to be incredibly useful.
Oh, tell me more about that, Jason. How does it work?
Well, you use a speech-to-text app or software and try to speak clearly and fluently enough for it to accurately transcribe what you're saying. It's great feedback on your clarity and speed.
That sounds fantastic. I'm definitely going to try that with my students. Now, we can't forget about the importance of mindset shifts in building confidence.
Absolutely crucial. One of the biggest shifts I encourage is to focus on communication rather than perfection. It's about getting your message across, not speaking like a dictionary.
Yes, and embracing the idea that making mistakes is not just okay, but necessary for improvement. Every mistake is a learning opportunity.
Exactly. Another important mindset shift is to view speaking English as an exciting challenge rather than a scary obstacle.
I love that perspective. It's all about reframing our thoughts, isn't it? And celebrating small victories along the way.
Absolutely. Every time you push through a difficult conversation or express a complex idea, that's a win worth celebrating.
Couldn't agree more, Jason. Now, as we're nearing the end of our episode, shall we do a quick recap for our listeners?
Great idea, Julia. So, we've covered why learners pause when speaking English, things like confidence issues, vocabulary gaps, overthinking, and nervousness.
And we've discussed practical techniques to reduce pauses, like thinking in English, using filler words judiciously, shadowing, and avoiding perfectionism.
We also talked about brain training exercises for faster speech, including learning phrases, active listening, anticipation, and imitation.
Don't forget those fantastic fluency exercises, the 1 minute speaking challenge, story retelling, speed conversations, and speech-to-text practice.
And of course, those all-important mindset shifts to build confidence and embrace the learning process.
Exactly. Now, for our listeners out there, we have a call to action for you. We want you to choose one technique or exercise we've discussed today and commit to practicing it for the next week.
That's right. Whether it's shadowing your favorite English podcast, doing daily 1 minute speaking challenges, or practicing thinking in English, pick something and stick with it.
And remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination. Every little bit of practice counts, so be patient and kind to yourself.
Absolutely. And we'd love to hear about your experiences. Share your progress with us on our social media channels or in the comments section of this podcast.
Yes, please do. Your stories inspire us and help other learners too. And if you have any questions or need more tips, don't hesitate to reach out.
That's right. We're here to support you on your English fluency journey. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of English Fluency Unleashed.
We hope you found it helpful and inspiring. Until next time, keep practicing, stay positive, and remember, fluency is within your reach.
Goodbye, everyone, and happy speaking.
Bye-bye, and good luck with your fluency journey.
If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Your support helps us keep making great content.